In February 1959, deep in the icy wilderness of the Ural Mountains, 9 Soviet hikers, young, experienced, and full of life, embarked on a journey that would end in one of the most perplexing mysteries of the 20th century. Their goal was to reach Otorten, a mountain whose name ominously translates to "Don't go there" in the local Mansi language. They never made it. What rescuers found weeks later has sparked decades of speculation, horror, and intrigue. Their tent, discovered high on the slopes of Dead Mountain, Kolatsyakal, was inexplicably slashed open from the inside. The bodies of the hikers were found scattered across a 1-mile radius, in various states of undress, some with horrifying injuries including crushed ribs, skull fractures, and missing eyes and tongues. And yet, there was no sign of a struggle, no footprints of attackers. Just frozen corpses, a torn tent, and 1,000 unanswered questions. This documentary will take you through every major theory, official, unofficial, and controversial. We'll explore what might have really happened that night on Dead Mountain, and ask the question no one dares answer. What if none of the explanations we've been given are true? The most widely accepted explanation is the slab avalanche theory. Proposed in recent years by researchers Johann Gaum and Alexander Puzrin, it suggests the hikers unwittingly set up camp in a precarious snowpack. When they cut into the slope to level the tent site, they may have triggered a delayed slab of snow to shift above them. This type of avalanche doesn't require a steep slope or much snow. It could explain why they fled in the middle of the night without shoes or jackets. Some hikers died of hypothermia in the forest below, while others succumbed to blunt force trauma consistent with heavy snow pressure. But critics point out several inconsistencies. There was no obvious sign of an avalanche at the scene. All of the nearby trees were still standing and the hiker's tent was partially upright when found. Could an avalanche have occurred without leaving a trace? Or is this just a convenient scientific band-aid over a wound no one can explain? Another natural explanation involves katabatic winds, powerful downward-flowing gusts of icy air that can descend like a freight train in mountainous regions. These winds have been known to cause sudden drops in temperature and immense psychological stress. In this scenario, the hikers may have been forced to abandon the tent to escape the freezing gale, believing it would collapse. Confused and disoriented, they scattered and became separated in the darkness. Their desperate attempts to stay warm around a small fire in the forest would ultimately fail. But again, no wind damage was evident at the scene. Could this explain their fear and flight? Perhaps, but it still doesn't address the bizarre injuries some of them suffered. Donnie Icar's book Dead Mountain proposed a novel explanation: infrasound. Generated by specific wind conditions as air moves over the dome-shaped mountain, infrasound is a low-frequency sound wave that humans can't consciously hear, but which can trigger irrational fear, nausea, and hallucinations. Could this explain why 9 experienced hikers suddenly panicked and fled into sub-zero temperatures? It's plausible. The sound could have triggered a fight-or-flight response, convincing the group that danger was imminent even when none existed. Still, it's hard to believe that all 9 were equally affected, and that they didn't return once outside and realize the danger wasn't real. The human brain is complex, yes, but would it truly override survival instincts so completely? And again, this theory doesn't explain the horrific injuries sustained by the hikers. This is where things start to feel less like a science paper and more like an X-Files episode. In 1959, the Soviet Union was neck-deep in secret weapons testing. Some theorists believe the hikers wandered into a classified military testing zone, possibly the site of parachute mine experiments. These mines explode in midair, causing massive internal injuries with minimal external trauma, which eerily matches autopsy reports from some of the hikers. Compounding this theory are strange orange orbs seen in the sky by locals on the night of the incident, possibly rockets or flares. There were also traces of radiation found on some of the clothing. The bodies were strangely discolored with orange skin and white hair, something that could be explained by radiation poisoning or exposure to exotic chemicals. This theory suggests that once officials realized what had happened, they staged the scene to look like a tragic accident and sealed off the area for years. Still, this explanation raises its own questions. Why allow a group to hike into a known testing area? Why not just recover the bodies and cover up the entire event quietly, rather than conduct a strange, partial investigation that invited more curiosity than it killed? The presence of radiation on the clothing of certain hikers is often cited as proof of military involvement, or perhaps even an encounter with something way less earthly and more ominous. Soviet officials said the radiation wasn't high enough to be dangerous. But why was it there at all? Some claim it was due to contaminated equipment, as two of the hikers had worked in nuclear facilities. Others suspect the hikers came into contact with experimental material, whether by accident or design. Could this point to nuclear weapons testing, a failed recovery mission, or even extraterrestrial exposure? We don't know. But for many, the radiation detail is the thread that unravels the entire official story. Among the more controversial theories is that the hikers were attacked by a Yeti, yes, the mythical snow-dwelling ape man of Russian folklore. This theory got a strange boost from the hikers themselves. Among their belongings was a satirical newspaper they had created as part of the trip, complete with a fake headline joking about being stalked by the abominable snowman. What started as a joke has become fodder for enthusiasts who believe something primal and undiscovered still roams the Siberian wild. Could an enormous, powerful creature have attacked the hikers, causing panic, confusion, and ultimately death? There's no physical evidence of such a beast, of course, but some point to the massive injuries, the missing tongues and eyes, and the sheer terror that must have compelled the hikers to flee into the darkness. Is this theory a bit of a stretch? Maybe. Maybe not. Not all monsters live in fairy tales, secret police, and paranoia. We can't talk about the Soviet Union without mentioning the KGB. Some theorists argue the hikers weren't just innocent adventurers. They were involved in espionage, possibly transporting sensitive materials or observing a test site. This theory suggests that the group may have been eliminated by Soviet operatives after witnessing something they shouldn't have seen, or for failing a mission. There's no hard proof, of course. But the speed at which the investigation was closed, the redacted documents, and the general atmosphere of Cold War paranoia all provide fertile ground for suspicion. Maybe this wasn't just a hiking accident. Maybe it was a government cleanup job. We can't talk about the Soviet Union without mentioning the KGB. Some theorists argue the hikers weren't just innocent adventurers, they were involved in espionage, possibly transporting sensitive materials or observing a test site. This theory suggests that the group may have been eliminated by Soviet operatives after witnessing something they shouldn't have seen, or for failing a mission. There's no hard proof, of course. But the speed at which the investigation was closed, the redacted documents, and the general atmosphere of Cold War paranoia all provide fertile ground for suspicion. Maybe this wasn't just a hiking accident. Maybe it was a government cleanup job. Now, we're heading into full conspiracy territory. Some believe the hikers encountered a dimensional anomaly, UFO, or time rift, causing hallucinations, panic, and even physical harm. There are numerous accounts of strange lights, burnt tree branches, and unexplained magnetic anomalies in this region. A few theorists go as far as claiming the group triggered a temporal event, something akin to being caught in a glitch in the Matrix. Did they briefly slip out of time? Were they chased by beings not of this world? Did they die not from trauma, but from sheer incomprehensible terror? Science fiction? Maybe. But the Dyatlov Pass has become a modern legend for a reason. It resists rational explanation. It's an uneasy reminder of the limits of our understanding of this world. 60 years later, the Dyatlov Pass remains one of the most haunting unsolved mysteries in modern history. The truth, if it ever existed in retrievable form, is likely buried under snow, redacted documents, and decades of time. What happened that night may never be fully known, but the case refuses to die because it strikes a primal chord, the fear of the unknown, the danger of isolation, and the nagging suspicion that sometimes the official story isn't the full story. Whether you believe in avalanches, vengeful yetis, government cover-ups, or something even stranger, the Dyatlov Pass incident is a reminder that the world is still full of things that defy explanation. Have you heard of any other theories of what happened to the hikers of Dyatlov Pass? Do you have any theories of your own? Let's discuss in the comments below. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel where we explore more of our enigmatic world.